Welcome back to Sport on 7. I'm Tom Bushell. You can find me on Twitter. It's at Tom Bushell UAE. Now, the Mubadala World Tennis Championships are all set to go in December in the capital in Abu Dhabi. 6 of the top 9 players will compete, with the world's top 4 all confirmed. In the unveiling, Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Andy Murray, David Ferrer, Wifred-Tsonga and Stan Wawrinka will all play between the 26th of December and the 28th of December. Former Wimbledon champion Pat Cash was also introduced as the tournament ambassador, and I spoke to him at Zayed Sports City.
Pat, welcome to Abu Dhabi. Of course, a fantastic event this is later on in the year, and some great players playing here as well this time.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably the strongest lineup they've ever had for the Mubadala Championships, and it's they've got the top 4 players in the world. We've got Rafa, of course, who's new #1, 2 Grand Slams last year. Novak Djokovic. We have David Ferrer, who had his first Grand Slam final at the French Open this year, and of course Andy Murray, the Brit who won Wimbledon. They're the top 4 players, and of course Stan Wawrinka from Switzerland. He's been the Swiss #2 for a while, but now he's in the Swiss #1, US Open semi-finalist. And Wifred-Tsonga, who's always one of the dark horses, a Frenchman, a brilliant player, very exciting player to watch. So he's probably the strongest lineup they've ever had at this event.
So many stories out of the world of tennis in the last 12 months or so, and of course when they come here to Abu Dhabi, it's the start of a brand new season. But let's talk about the world #1 for a start. Rafa Nadal, what a comeback. Have you seen anything like that before in the game of tennis, from where he was to then get back to #1?
Yeah, well, it is an amazing comeback. There's no doubts about it. Certainly this time last year, where everybody was wondering, what's going on with Rafa? Is he ever going to play again? He said he was coming back. He was going to take his time and make sure he got back and fit. And he did take his time. He played. He started off in sort of February, March, playing clay court tournaments, smaller clay court tournaments around South America, Central America. And then burst on and won the big hard court championships in the US. And we thought, wow, that's a great effort, because he doesn't his knees on hard court. Then wins the French Open. Well, that's no surprise really, but considering he was out for 7 months, that was a bit of a surprise. The only stumbling block he's had all year was really Wimbledon. He said his knees hadn't recovered from the French Open, but comes on and wins the US Open, now world #1. Obviously Novak Djokovic would love to get that title back. He's been the world #1 for the past few years. So it's a real rivalry going on, and Andy Murray, of course, he's one of the, having won Wimbledon. And the US Open, of course, within 1 year, and the Olympics, and the big gold medal, has had an incredible year. So they're the top 3 players in the world, and it has been some fantastic stories this year.
And as we say, this event is at the start of the season. They're pretty much on their way to the Australian leg and building up to the Australian Open. This event brings a nice atmosphere, doesn't it? The players are fresh, they're ready to go again, and they're ready to see what the other players are looking like as well after a few weeks off.
Yeah, that's right. This is really one of the stepping stones to the Australian Open. It's a great tournament. The players are always honoured to come here and come here to play. And when they come here, they're serious. I mean, they're only 3 weeks away from the Australian Open. They've had this circuit is now slightly shorter, so they've had an extended break. So this is really one of their first real hit-outs, and they're going to be absolutely flat out. And to see them, they'll be practicing on the hard side courts here really hard. It's a great opportunity for the locals to get in here and have a look at the players warming up and having practice sets. It is really going to be a real fantastic festival atmosphere. There's going to be a lot of junior clinics on kids, school kids, and then the players are, of course, on their way to the Australian Open. They want to play tough competition. They want to have some warmer weather from Europe, and this is a perfect stop on the way through.
And how do you see that next season going? I mean, obviously Rafa Nadal will want to push on, but Andy Murray as well, having got that Wimbledon title and got a couple of slams under his belt now, he'll want to push on as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting year next year. At the moment, you have to say, look, Rafa's the best player in the world, but Djokovic is so consistent. Year in, year out, the last few years, he's always been there, either winning Grand Slams or getting to the finals and semi-finals, so we expect Novak to continually be there. You got players who you're not 100% sure how they're going to go. Somebody like Roger Federer. You got David Ferrer, who's always there. Tsonga, Berdych, and Wawrinka. Stan Wawrinka's had the year of his life. So you've got 6 of the top 10 players here. So they'll be very in serious form. They won't be overly concerned if they lose a match, but they'll be certainly working their way towards top form for a few weeks away in the Australian Open.
Final one from me. You mentioned Roger Federer, of course. He's had a disappointing year. I think, obviously his expectations are so high, but he's not going to like it not winning, is he? How do you see the rest of his career going, or how long do you think that career will carry on for Roger?
I think he'll keep going. I mean, as long as he's enthusiastic about it, and I believe he is. I think he picks and chooses his tournaments. He's been very careful to keep his career can go for quite a few more years. So, he can't play every event, but in some ways that's hindering him a little bit. But also he's got a life. He's got a family. He's got a wife. He's got kids. So he wants to. And there's no doubt he's towards the end of his career, but he'll keep going for a few years, and he'll absolutely be a threat in every tournament. I don't think he's very far off his top form. He's just lost a little edge, and that could come back next year, and he could win another Grand Slam.
Yeah, make sure you get your tickets for the World Tennis Championships in Abu Dhabi. Plenty to get involved in, and a great way to spend that week between Christmas and New Year as well. I also spoke to Greg Sproul from IMG about the event's 6th year and his hopes for the future.
Where do we start? A fantastic lineup, of course. The 6 of the top 10. It really is going to be an exciting 3 days.
Yeah, it will. I mean, 6 of the top 9, truth be told. So we've got an unbelievable lineup. Numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 9, obviously, and 8. But it's a fantastic lineup, and to be able to get better and better every year is an achievement. So the competition on court is going to be really great, but there's lots of other things that we're going to have, Tom, as we always do off court, and the clinics and the access to the players and the village and the food and beverage and all of those things. So it's going to be another great event.
Again, we talk about how it's such a great lineup all the time, but I guess it really isn't that hard to get them here because it is on their way to the Australian leg of the season, and of course it's a great place that they love to come to all the time.
It is, yeah, and it's got a really great reputation amongst the players as being a great place to start their season and on the road to the Australian Open. I mean, the Australian Open starts January 13th, so it's really not that far after the conclusion of the Mubadala World Tennis Championship, just 2 weeks. So when they hit here, they're going at a pretty high level already, and it's all in preparation for the first Grand Slam of the year. So it'll be good. It'll be fantastic.
I have to ask you, obviously, how do we keep improving this? Has there been discussions to make it an ATP event as well? Is that where you'd like it to go?
Well, it's far from our decision. We leave that to our owners in Flash. To make that kind of decision. Our responsibility is to outline what options are out there, and we always do that. And if a good option comes along that makes sense for Abu Dhabi and makes sense for Flash, makes sense for Mubadala, then it'll be up to them to move that forward. But there are options that are out there, and we'll see.
In terms of this season, of course, plenty to play for come December. Andy Murray will be back from injury. Rafa Nadal will want to maintain that number 1 spot. Djokovic will want to get it back, so there's lots to play for.
It's so true. I mean, we've seen just this last weekend, we see Djokovic beat Nadal in Beijing, right? So, and now they move on to Shanghai, and the battle goes on. So they've had an unbelievable rivalry throughout their careers. But it's not just about those two guys, too, because, you look at the year that Wawrinka had and his run at the U.S. Open, for example, and you look at what Joe Wilfried-Tsonga did in Australia and how he did, particularly at the French, taking out Roger Federer and so on in the quarters. So all of them have had a really incredible year. David Ferrer, 4th in the world, I mean, in the finals of the French. So everybody has had an exceptional year. We've got all of the finalists who played in every Grand Slam event from this year participating in the Mubadala World Tennis Championship. So it's, the lineup is stellar.
Very much looking forward to the World Tennis Championships. Tickets are on sale now as well, so make sure you get involved in that. Now, that's it for part 2, but when we come back, we'll chat to Kevin Peterson and also Chris McCarty. We'll see you in just a short while on Sport on 7.